Yo, 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 what up, world? What's going on? What's happening, man? Welcome to the Damn YouTube Sports Talk show. It's your boy Ralph Sneaks coming to you with another episode. Um, Shout out to AIG Productions, uh, helping me put this together and orchestrate it. Shout out to everybody over there. Follow me on my social media platforms. IG, my personal page, Ralph_Sneaks. The Sports Talk page is damn_YouTube_Sports Talk. If you want to go follow me over there on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. It's damn YouTube Sports Talk. Another episode coming to you, man. Today we're gonna get into little NBA free agency, the winners, losers. Well, I got three categories actually: the winners, the losers, and the teams that pretty much stayed the same. We're gonna get to it. Yeah, those are three categories we got right now. Going into this free agency, the teams that were winners, the teams that were losers, and the teams that pretty much stayed the same. So let's get to it, man. Let's start with the winners. Um, let's start with the winners. One team I got as a winner in this NBA free agency. Well, I got multiple teams, but we're gonna start with this team here, the Dallas Mavs. I think the Dallas Mavs just coming off being in the NBA Finals in which they lost to the Boston Celtics, adding a guy like Klay Thompson, who chose to come to Dallas over going to LA, in Orlando, and a couple other places that he was rumored to go. Coming to Dallas, I think that's a nice piece for Dallas because I think Klay is falling. He ain't the same Klay. He had the ACL injury and he had the Achilles injury, so he essentially missed 2 seasons dealing with both injuries. And I get he ain't the same Klay that he used to be. He's not the lockdown defender that he once was. He's just overall not the same player that he was. But it looks that it is that way, but you was looking at him as a second option over there in Golden State, even after coming back from a torn Achilles and ACL. And he's not a second option. But if he goes over to Dallas, he doesn't have to be a second option. That's a nice third option to have. So the production he was giving you in Golden State as a second option, that's nice production in Dallas as a third option. It won't look as bad now in Dallas with him being a third option behind Luka and Kyrie that it looked when he had to be a second option in Golden State behind Steph. He's no longer a splash brother. He's now in Dallas. So, the stats and production he was giving you over there in Golden State, I think it would look better. The stats and production he was giving you in Golden State as a second option, I think that would look better in Dallas as a third option behind Luka and Kyrie. Now you can't really just pick at Luka and go at Luka and pick at Kyrie. There's another guy that they can kick the ball out to, and I think that Kyrie can. Not Kyrie, but I think that Klay can still knock down some shots to the point that you just can't leave him out there, on the island in open space and catch and shoot. I think when all the attention and focus is on Kyrie and Luka, there's a guy that can still knock down some shots. He can hit the corner three, and I think that's what his role is going to be reduced to in Dallas. And coming over there, I think that was a nice pickup. They lost what's my guy over there played with the Heat, Derrick Jones. They lost him, and they still got PJ Washington over there. They still got Daniel Gafford over there, and they still got, of course, Derek Lively, who they drafted. They still got him over there. So that was you basically lost Derrick Jones and replaced him with Klay Thompson. So, which in my opinion at this stage is still an upgrade. Not talking bad about Derrick Jones, but he's never been the type of player that Klay Thompson is or was. So you lost one and you gained one. So that was a nice pickup. That's why I got Dallas is one of the teams that's a winner. Who else I got? OKC Thunder. I think they was a winner as well. Even they didn't make a major move, but the move they made was necessary. They swapped Josh Giddey out for Alex Caruso. I think that was actually a good trade for both sides. Even better trade for OKC because as you've seen in the playoffs, they had to bench Josh Giddey. So they had to bench him. So now you get another guy that comes in and can be a defender, Alex Caruso. I think they've identified their two scorers over there in OKC. One being obviously Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was in the MVP conversation, the MVP running. And the other guy that came into his own and started scoring the basketball was Jalen Williams. So now they've identified their two scorers, and now they have two more defenders with now adding Alex Caruso and already having Lou Dort there. That's what they actually needed in the playoffs. They needed a little bit more defense. Chet Holt, and then they also added Hartenstein from the Knicks. They also needed a big, so Chet Hogan wouldn't get so much bullied in the paint. So adding those two guys, in my opinion, was big for OKC. Now they got a guy that can play in the paint that won't get bullied around in the paint in Hardenstein, and they could just let Chet Holmgren be the stretch four that he want to be, and he doesn't necessarily have to bang and be down in the paint, getting bullied around. As you saw in that Dallas series, they were just taking it to Chet Holmgren in the paint, and now they got a guy in the paint that they just can't take it to like that. Hardenstein pretty much held his own when he was with the Knicks. Hardenstein actually bounced around to a couple teams, but he's made a name for himself when he was with the Knicks. And now that's a nice pickup for OKC, adding Hardenstein to the mix. So Chet Holmgren can just not necessarily always be in the paint getting banged around, but also just, he can float around and be the stretch four out there on the perimeter. And adding Alex Caruso, another guy that can defend multiple positions. And like I said, they've identified their two guys that can score the ball. Well, three guys now because Chet Holmgren can shoot it. Then, of course, you got Shai Gilgeous and Jane Williams. So they've identified their scores, and they have added another defender in Alex Caruso to go along with Lou Dort. So OKC is a team that's a winner this offseason. Moving on, I think the Pelicans is also a winner this offseason. Adding DeJounte Murray to the mix. And not even giving up Brandon Ingram. Not that I'm saying they're gonna keep Brandon Ingram and pay Brandon Ingram, but they didn't give up Brandon Ingram, and it also helped that Atlanta wasn't trying to get Brandon Ingram either. So, and it was obvious that they needed a point guard. Alvarez, he couldn't be your point guard. He doesn't score enough. I like his defensive intensity, but he doesn't score enough. And they were trying to somewhat make CJ McCollum like a point, and CJ McCollum is not a point. CJ McCollum is strictly a shooting guard. He's a two guard. He's nothing other than a two guard. So now that they have a two-way point guard in there that can actually give you 20 and then play solid defense on the other end, that's a big W for the New Orleans Pelicans. Especially when you're getting Zion is playing majority of the season. You got CJ McCollum can just now play his natural shooting guard position because you now have a DeJounte Murray in there that can handle the ball, give you 20, and play solid defense on the other end. And he's also a facilitating point guard. So he's going to get the ball to the other guys and get them the ball. He's going to definitely get it to Zion. He's going to set up and make it easier for CJ McCollum and some of those other guys. And they can just kind of play now without actually relying on a point guard because they now have one. It was obvious that they needed one in the postseason. And now they got one to DeJounte Murray. And not only do they got a point guard in DeJounte Murray, they got a point guard that they don't have to worry about paying right away because he's now under contract. He got a deal with Atlanta. So he's under contract for, I think, 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. So you don't have to worry about paying a point guard for another 4 years. So you got your guy. He's back in the West. And I think that's going to help the Pelicans out a lot this season, having an actual point guard that can actually score the ball and play defense on the other end and not just shoot. I ain't saying he can shoot the three ball well, but he scores. He can give you 20 to 22. That's what the Pelicans needed. And that's what they got in DeJounte Murray. So I got them as being a winner this offseason. And like I said, they didn't get off Brandon Ingram. They unloaded Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance, and I think 2 first-round picks. And one of those picks wasn't even their pick. It was the Lakers pick that they deferred to next season. So they did a damn good job of getting a DeJounte Murray without giving up a whole lot. They really basically didn't give up nothing, really. Dyson Daniels, a young guard that probably wasn't going to get the minutes anyway. So that's not a big loss. You're losing Larry Nance, who was on an expiring contract anyway. So that's not a big loss. And you probably wasn't going to re-sign him anyway. And then you gave up 2 picks, in which one of the picks wasn't yours. It was somebody else's, the Lakers pick. So it was yours, but it wasn't yours, so to speak. So you got a player back in return for pretty much not really giving up much. So the Pelicans, I got them down as a winner. The Orlando Magic, even though they made the playoffs last year, they added another veteran player and shooter in KCP. I think this was a winning move, not a winning move as to put them over the hump, but I think it was a good move that put them in the winners category because you got a nice nucleus of young players. And I don't think KCP is the guy that's going to come in there and take the ball out of those guys' hands. I think KCP will be a good locker room guy for a young squad. I think he's a guy that's still capable of starting this league, and he's not a guy that's going to command a lot of touches. That's going to take away from your young nucleus that you got over there in Banchero, and you got Wagner, and then you got Suggs, Wendell Carter over there. So you got a nice nucleus of guys over there, and I don't think KCP is going to come in and disrupt that. You know, he's not a locker room counselor. He's a guy that can still start in his league, and he can knock down the 3-ball. So adding KCP and not really losing nothing over there was a winning move, in my opinion, by Orlando. So I'm not saying that Orlando is going to be in title contention with making this move, but I don't think it was a bad move at all. That's why I put him in on the winner side during this free agency, because they added a guy like KCP who can still knock down shots. He's a veteran guy for that young team over there, and he's not a locker room counselor. He's as far as I know, he's a good teammate, and he can still start and knock down shots. And he won't disrupt the chemistry that they have going over there with the youth movement and the nucleus that they got. Next up, winner Sacramento Kings. They just acquired DeMar DeRozan. They didn't lose none of their key pieces. They lost Harrison Barnes, which was a veteran, but you're replacing Harrison Barnes' veteran leadership or being a vet as a player. You're replacing that with another vet who can score the ball better than the guy you just got rid of in Harrison Barnes. So you putting him over there. You didn't lose. Who you lost? Chris Duarte, Harrison Barnes, and couple second round picks. So you didn't lose nothing, but you added a veteran player that can still score the ball. And his veteran presence as still being a scorer is more valuable than what you lost in Harrison Barnes, who can't score the ball like DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan can still put the ball in the hole. You know what I mean? So, and then you added him to that Sacramento team in which they retained and brought back Malik Monk. They already had De'Aaron Fox over there. Sabonis was already over there. They kept Kenny Murray. He's over there. And they also had Kevin Hurt on the trade block, but they didn't move him. So he may be moved at the trade deadline. Who knows? But they also retained him. So they got a pretty solid team over there, and they drafted Devin Carter. So they added without losing. And out there in the Western Conference, I think that was big. So that's why I got Sacramento as a winner this offseason. Let's move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they didn't make too many major moves, but the move that they did make, they went out and got Rob Dillingham. They acquired him in a trade from the San Antonio Spurs. You look at the team and what Minnesota had last year, they were basically a top 3 defensive team pretty much all season. They were up there defensively all season. And it showed in the playoffs that they needed another scorer. So I think if you take Cat and make him your third option, with Ant-Man being your first option, then you bring in Rob Dillingham, who's just who explode offensively. That's another offensive threat that they needed in the playoffs that they now have. And I think that he wouldn't have lasted when Minnesota picked anyway. So Minnesota had to have it. I mean, they went out and did what they do. They had to get him. So they made the move to get him. They didn't lose Carl Anthony. So now Carl Anthony could be your third option. I think Carl Anthony at this stage for that team, considering what we saw in the playoffs this year, it would be better served for him being a third option rather than a second option. Now you got another scorer in the backcourt with Ant-Man that can put the ball in the hole and put pressure on the defense. And they didn't have that guy in the playoffs last year that could do that. And you don't really look at a rookie coming in and contributing right away like that. But looking at the team that he's going to in Minnesota, who lost in the Western Conference Finals, that's what they needed. They didn't have another offensive threat outside of Anthony Edwards. You look at Karl Anthony Towns, but you don't really look at him as putting as much pressure on the defense and being that guy in the postseason. You know what I mean? So now he's a better served as a third option than a second option, as we saw in the playoffs. And the one knock that they had on Rob Dillingham coming out of there was probably his defense. So if you had one knock on his game, it probably would be defense. But like I said, with the Minnesota Timberwolves, been a damn good defensive team, probably being the top 3 defensive team pretty much all season, and include the playoffs. That kind of overshadows his lack of defense because they play good team defense overall, and they could just slide him right in, and he can go get right back to work with him. They really won't be missing too much. Now let's move on to the Memphis Grizzlies. I think they'll win them. They went out and got Zach Edey in the draft. People kind of forgot about Memphis. They forgot about Ja, but Ja was out with a season-ending injury. They get Ja back. You still got Marcus Smart there. You got Desmond Bain there. Jared Jackson is there. And now you drafted Zach Edey. So now Zach Edey, of course, is going to be your 5. Jared Jackson can be your 4. And, Jared Jackson, his name comes up in Defensive Player of the Year conversations. So now you just slide him to being the power forward. And you got Desmond Bain there, who can give you 20 plus. Then you know what Ja can do. You got Marcus Smart, who's also a defensive guy there. So that was pretty much one area that they needed to get better in, and they got Zach Edey. And so far in summer league, I know it's just summer league, but Zach Edey pretty much looked decent and look pretty solid. You know what I mean? We don't know what it's gonna be like in the season, but even before Ja got hurt, Memphis was a consistent playoff team. You know what I mean? So getting Ja back, that's gonna put Memphis back in the mix. If Ja comes back close to being 100% of what he was before he got hurt, Memphis is gonna be back in the playoffs. So they really didn't have to do too much in free agency. They did they damage in the draft by getting Zach Edey. And if it wasn't Zach Edey, I think they was gonna make a play on Klingon. So either way it goes, it seemed like they knew that they needed to get a center, and they got one of the two in this draft, and he's gonna be plug and play right away. And he kind of seems to fit this Memphis team. They not gonna really need him to do a whole lot. Defend and just rim protect, defend, and just get the easy buckets when they set him up, because you got Ja there, you got Desmond Bain there, so you're pretty solid. You know what I mean? They're gonna be right back in the mix. You look at the New York Knicks. I think they're a winner. I mean, the Knicks could be the Knicks. I put Knicks as a winner. They going out and adding Mikal Bridges. They added more defense. I mean, they gave up a hell of a lot to get Mikal Bridges, but it was much needed. You know what I mean? You're looking at the Boston Celtics, who just won it. And you're looking at the New York Knicks, how they lost to the Indiana Pacers in the playoffs. So, adding Mikal Bridges was a big thing. And they also was able to bring back OG Anunoby. So now you got defense out the ass. You're getting Julius Randle back. He's more of an offensive player than defensive player to me. You got Jalen Brunson, who's, offensive. So now you're going to add, you brought OG Anunoby back, and what you had to bring him back because of what you traded off to get him. So you had to bring him back. To me, that was a no-brainer. Then you added Mikal Bridges to go along with Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo. So you pretty much brought the Villanova boys back together at MSG. So that's what happened. And so they're going to be pretty stacked and stout defensively. I'm not sure what their depth is going to be like because, like I said, they lost Hartenstein to OKC. Mitchell Robinson's still there, and I heard he was on the trading block, so I'm not sure if he's going to be moved or not. And if he is moved, I'm not sure when, maybe at the deadline. But I would put the Knicks in there as a winner. That's exactly what you're going to need to go up against Boston. I think Boston can still beat the Knicks, but it's not going to be easy for Boston to beat the Knicks if these guys can stay healthy and stay in the mix, because we all know how Tibbs like to run his guys 42, 43, 44 minutes a game. Now you got Paul George over in the East with Philly now. And you still always have to you don't really look at the Miami Heat as being a threatening team, but somehow when you always look up, they're in the playoffs, making noise, making a run in the postseason. So you now got a defensive squad that can pretty much stack up against whatever's thrown at you in the playoffs. Milwaukee hadn't really done much. That's why I got them on the loser list. They hadn't really done much this offseason. So you're looking at the teams that's going to be a threat to you. You just lost to the Pacers in the playoffs, and they're going to get a couple players back. And they pretty much brought their same squad back. They didn't really make too much noise in free agency. You're looking at Boston, who just won the chip. You're looking at Philly just adding Paul George. You're looking at a team like Miami, who you don't really look at in the light as the same other as those other teams that I just named. But every time you look up, Miami seems to be in the playoffs, making some sort of run in the playoffs. So you're looking at that. So yeah, New York, the Knicks, I got them as winners. Adding Mikal Bridges in the offseason. Let's move on to the losers of this NBA free agency so far this offseason. You're looking at the Lakers. They obvious losers. They didn't get anybody. They swung and they missed heavily on everybody. They didn't get Trae Young. They didn't get DeJounte Murray. They didn't get Donovan Mitchell. They didn't get Klay Thompson. They didn't get DeMar DeRozan. They didn't get none of the heavy hitter guys that they were supposedly going after to get in free agency. Said they were looking for a center. They ain't got one yet. You brought in JJ Redick with zero experience as a head coach. You drafted Bronny James. You drafted Dalton Connect, who, in my opinion, I'm gonna connect Dalton Connect to another team later on. Once I get to the little bit later on down the list, but you end up getting a steal in Dalton Connect because you swung and missed on other guys. Like I said, you didn't get none of those guys. And LeBron was allegedly he was willing to take a pay cut, so you can get somebody in there. You didn't get nobody in there, so now the pay cut is off the table. He signed his max extension, so you're pretty much gonna run everything back. You had a lot of guys who opted into the contracts that you really don't want. If you're the Lakers, you can't be excited about Cam Reddish opting into his contract. D'Lo opting into his contract. So you're pretty much running back the same team. And you're trying to get a center and you ain't able to get one yet. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get one or when you're able to get one, but as of now, you haven't got one yet. So AD is still your 5. I know he prefers to play the 4, and that's probably why you're going to get a 5, so you can slide him back to his 4, LeBron to the 3, and you haven't even got a 2. Well, you got Austin Reeves there, but you're pretty much running the same team back as of now that you got. You didn't get anybody. You had all these people on your list of guys to go after and get, and you didn't get not one of them. So, yep, the Lakers losers. Both LA teams losers, actually. The Clippers as well. They let Paul George essentially walk for nothing. I already talked about how much they gave up to get Paul George. Yeah, I mean, it was a shitload of assets they spent to get Paul George. But you essentially let Paul George walk for nothing. You re-signed James Harden, who did nothing for you. Then you got Kawhi Leonard still there, whose injuries, pretty much plays when he want to play. And then you turn down the deal with the Golden State Warriors that would have made you better. And I'm not sure why you didn't want to do business with the Golden State Warriors. But if you're the Clippers, you're not going anywhere. So you might as well go ahead and do the deal and help yourself out getting better. I mean, I understand you don't want to help a team out in your conference, but at the same time, you got to understand and realize there's a tough conference. You're not going anywhere. You let Paul George walk for nothing. So you basically need to recoup some of the assets that it took to get Paul George. You're not going to get all the assets back. Nobody's giving you all that back. I understand that, but you need to get some of it back. And that would have been the case if you had done the deal with the Warriors. I think the Warriors deal included maybe Wiggins, Chris Paul. I think they would even wouldn't throw Kuminga or Moody in there in a first round pick. That would have been much better than just letting Paul George walk to Philly for pretty much nothing and sign a max deal over there. So the Clippers are losers on that end. And I understand you did sign Kevin Porter Jr. So you signed him. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you did re-sign James Harden. And I think Derrick Jones might be over there now, if I'm not mistaken. But that's still not better than the deal that the Warriors offered you for Paul George. So, yeah, for that, I got the Clippers as being losers. Golden State, as of now, Golden State, you can put them on the losers side, but they still trying to work things out with Utah, trying to get lower marketing. And let's be clear, you're doing business with Danny Ainge, so you're not going to get lower marketing for cheap. You're not going to get him for pennies. You're not going to get him for chump change. So go ahead and prepare to put a substantial offer on the table if you want lower marketing from Utah, because that's the game that Danny Ainge play. Danny Ainge don't play the mother. Danny Ainge ain't bullshitting when it comes to doing deals. Danny Ainge get the good end of the deal. So don't go at Danny Ainge and throw some bullshit out there and think you finna get lower marketing. It's not happening. So that's what I think they're going to put a substantial offer on the table for Lord Marketing. And if they somehow end up landing Lord Marketing, I could then see them being on the winning side. Because I could see Golden State Warriors trying to win another chip within the next couple of years, because they know that the time is coming where they're going to have to blow this thing completely up and start over. And I think that's why they're willing to include Jonathan Kuminga to get a player like Lord Marketing, because I don't think that the Golden State Warriors view Jonathan Kuminga as a guy that they can be the centerpiece of that franchise. He's not going. They don't view him as the cornerstone piece that they can build off based around him going into the future with that team as a rebuild. That's why I think they're willing to include him in a deal for Lord Marketing, because they know that they're going to have to blow it up. And when they do blow it up, they don't want any long-term contracts. They just going to go do full-fledged rebuild. And I think that's the reason why they didn't do the deal with the Chicago Bulls. And that's another reason why I got Golden State as a loser, because the Warriors was supposed to, well, they had a deal in place with Chicago, and Chicago was asking for Chris Paul, Wiggins, and I think it was another player in a first-round pick for Zach LaVine, and Golden State said no, just to turn around and waive Chris Paul, and Chris Paul go and sign with the San Antonio Spurs. So you could have got something back for Chris Paul, but instead he walks for nothing. And I understand it's Zach LaVine, and they probably looking at the fact that Zach LaVine has 3 years or something like that left on his deal, 3 or 4 more years. 3 years, I know, something like that left on his deal, like 40-something million. So they know they probably gonna have to blow it up before then. And it's hard to move off of Zach LaVine's contract now. So I think Golden State looking at the fact that they don't want to be stuck with his contract for the last 2 years remaining, or the last year remaining, when they get ready to go into their rebuild, because the rebuild is coming soon in Golden State, whether you want it to or not, it's coming. So they don't want to be tied up with no big contracts on the books. So I think they're going to try to keep everything, all the big contracts, they're not taking them. I think the only way they'll take a big contract is if it come with a draft pick or picks, and that will only be to get the picks or pick. It wouldn't be because the players who they really want with that contract tied up on their books. So if they can swing and hit on the Lord Marketing trade, I would then move them over to the winner side, because I think that at that point that they can based off of how it's going to be set up or whatever, it's going to be good teams to knock other good teams out. And with the championship pedigree that they have, I think that they could somehow, some way make one last run at a chip. Not saying that they're going to win it, but I think they could make one last run at it before they have to completely demolition it out there in the Bay Area. So that is coming. Sooner or later, it's coming. And they know it's coming. So they trying to go all in and win one more before it comes. And that's why they were trying to go for the Paul George trade, because that was, they was trying to swing for the fences, win another chip within these next couple of years, because they're going to have to blow it up after that. And they know it. So they're trying to go all in and win one more before they have to do that. But if they can get Lord Marketing, then yeah, I would, move them from the loser to the winner side. If they can get Lord Marketing. Because I think they then could, somehow still make a run. Steph still playing high level basketball. Then you could put Lord Marketing at the 5, and he could be a stretch 5. Then you could still have Draymond playing the 4. And depending on if Wiggins is there or not, you slide him at the 3 or whatever. But they can make it happen if they get Lord Marketing, depending on what they give up. And like I said, you're dealing with Danny Ainge, so it ain't gonna be pennies, it ain't gonna be chump change, it ain't gonna be no bullshit that you give up to get Lord Marketing out of Utah dealing with Danny Ainge. Let's go ahead and go. Who else next? Okay, Atlanta. I got Atlanta's a loser. The Hawks losing DeJounte Murray for 2 first-round picks, Dyson Daniels, and Larry Nance. And I think Cody Zeller was recently added to complete that trade. But if you the Hawks and you got Trae Young on your roster, why the hell are you not trying to compete? You see what all these other teams in the East are doing, and you're not trying to compete. You see what the Knicks did. You just seen the Indiana Pacers go to the Eastern Conference Finals. You seen Boston just win the finals. Milwaukee is still a playoff team. You're looking at a team like Miami, who is still a playoff team, and they seem to, you look up in Miami. Like I said, Miami seems to be just, they do just enough to get in, and then they make a run once they get in. But if you the Atlanta Hawks, if you give up a DeJounte Murray in a trade, you should be looking to get another 20, at least 20-point score back in return to play alongside Trey. But the fact that you didn't do that shows me that you're not really trying to win. You're really just trying to sell tickets and use Trey Young prime years to do that. It seems like they have no identity, they have no direction, they have no DNA over there in the front office in Atlanta. Now I understand moving off of DeJounte Murray because he wasn't a shooting guard, and that's what they had him playing, like a shooting guard, and he's not a shooting guard. You saw DeJounte play much better, and I'm not saying DeJounte a slouch. He ain't no slouch by no means. But when him and Trey was out there together, he just kind of didn't fit what they had him playing out on the wing. He's a point guard that needs the ball to create and play make. And if you also have Trey Young in the backcourt with you, who also needs the ball to create and play make and shoot, your fit moving off the ball is going to be kind of looking like you really out there not knowing and understanding what to do. So moving off of DeJounte Murray because he wasn't a natural shooting guard that you need, I get that. But the return you got back for DeJounte Murray, that's what makes you a loser. You should have went and got you could have used the Brandon Ingram. I understand that you did draft Richier with the first overall pick, and he plays a small forward position at 6'9" too. But you needed to get another 20-point score back. Now I don't, even if you had to go out and find a third team to get involved in the deal to get another 20-point score back, you needed to do that. If you got Trey Young, I don't know what the hell Atlanta over there doing. I'm not sure they know what they're doing. It kind of seems like they low-key trying to rebuild without really saying so. They just basically moved off of, if you look at it, they basically moved off DeJounte Murray just to shred salary and get under the salary cap. Because what they got back was expiring contract in Larry Nance. They got a Larry Nance Jr. They got 2 first-round picks. And they were just basically trying to recoup some of the picks that it took to get DeJounte out of San Antonio. They gave up 3. They got back 2 from New Orleans, and they moved him and got off of his contract that he just recently signed. And you got back an expiring contract. You didn't take on no money. You took on Dyson Daniels. You took on Larry Nance expiring deal, and you got 2 first rounds back. And then it took you 3 to get him from San Antonio. So it kind of seems like they're just trying to stay under the cap and shred salary because they didn't even get a player back. They could give you 20 to go along with Trey to help this team win. And it just recently came out that they didn't want to take Brandon Ingram back in the deal because they didn't want to come off of, I don't know if it was both or one or the other of Clint Capella or Onyeka Okongwu. So, and I could understand, you got Clint Capella on expiring contract. You could use that to trade somehow. But if you Atlanta, you're looking at who's going to be in the backcourt with Trey. I understand they got Kobe Buck and they drafted him last year. You got Bogdanovic. I think he was averaging like 15 or 16 off the bench. So I think they finally found a role that fits Bogdanovic best served coming off the bench as a 6-man. But who's going to be your starting 2? You're going to throw Kobe Buffkin out in the backcourt his second season with Trey. What are you going to do with Richier? You just drafted him with the first overall pick, and you still have DeAndre Hunt on the roster. So Atlanta got some moves to make. They got some things to figure out over there. That was a move, in my opinion, that didn't make them better. That was a move, in my opinion, that actually made them worse. I'm not sure what other moves they got up their sleeve before the end of this free agency, but as of now, that's why I got them as a loser, because they didn't make any move to get better. And when you got a player like Trey Young, you have to win. You constantly have to be in win mode, in my opinion, especially when that's the guy that's filling up the seats, that's selling the tickets. That's the one that's putting the asses in the seats. That's your franchise guy. And that's also the guy that you gave up Luka Doncic for. So, you got to think about it in those terms. If you Atlanta, you have to constantly be in win mode, especially seeing Luka Doncic in the finals this year. And you had him and you traded him for Trey. So you always got to think about that. Those two going to always be connected on that draft night. So that's why I got Atlanta in the losers column over there. And also they haven't addressed the situation with a big. Like I said, Onyeka Okongwu, he's an undersized big. And then you got Clint Capella is in the last year of his deal. So I'm not sure if they're going to go out and make a move for another big that's under contract or what the deal is. But if you Atlanta as of now, you even with Trey Young, you're more of you're a loser now because you didn't get anything comparable back for DeJounte Murray, but expiring contracts and draft picks. So that pretty much telling me you in a like a damn near rebuild almost without even saying it. So, and I wasn't surprised if after this season or at some point during this season, Trey Young requests a trade out of Atlanta because he kind of seeing the same thing that I'm saying. They ain't trying to win. They just trying to shred salary and stay up under a certain number going into the season. Moving on to Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, they're losers. They pretty much going into a rebuild. I think the last thing they need to do is they need to move off. Well, they got some pieces that other teams could use, like Cam Johnson. A contender could probably use Cam Johnson, or a young team that's making the playoffs that's trying to make a push to use Cam Johnson. You got a contender that could use Dorian Finney-Smith. And I don't know who the hell is going to take on Ben Simmons. So you may have to take one of those draft picks that you got from the Knicks, and you may have to attach that to Ben Simmons to move him. And even then, it's only certain teams that's going to be willing to take on Ben Simmons' contract. So you're pretty much stuck with Ben Simmons unless you want to. You got 5 picks from the Knicks. You might have to attach 2 of them just to move Ben Simmons and his money. Because I don't see the reason why the hell you will have Ben Simmons on your roster making that kind of money when you're going towards a rebuild. You just got rid of Mikal Bridges. Like I said, a contending team could use Dorian Finney-Smith services. Another team could use Cam Johnson services. And Cam Thomas. I'm not sure if that's the guy that you want to build a team around. And it was reported that the Brooklyn Nets last season turned down Mikal Bridges, Jalen Green from Houston trade. Houston reached out, wanted Mikal Bridges. They were willing to offer Jalen Green in the deal along with picks. And the Brooklyn said no. So turn that down, and then you turn around, even though you got more picks from the Knicks, that's your arch rival, right? I mean, damn, same city, same town, whatever, that's your rival. You send him over there for 5 picks. And we're going to see what those picks turn into. Because like I said, you still got Ben Simmons on your roster, so you may not even have 5 picks. You may have more like 3 picks because you might have to attach 2 of those picks just to move Ben Simmons, depending on how soon you're trying to get this rebuild started. And also, you just signed the big man, the center. Damn, I had a brain freeze. But you just signed him. It'll come back to you. You just signed him, so he may be, and it was reasonable money. I think it was 4 years, 25 mil. So 4 years, 100 mil. So that's 25 million a year. So that's a pretty reasonable. That's a movable contract. For a team, and if you're looking at a team like maybe Atlanta, if you want to make the swap, get not Cam Thomas, but if you want to get the big in there, damn, I can't think of his name. It's gonna come to me, but that's a young big that pretty much does the same thing as Clint Capella, and you're going to get him on a 4-year contract whenever he's eligible to be traded. That, in my opinion, if Atlanta's moving towards trying to youth movement or whatever, and Clint Capella's on an expiring contract, you can move him and get the same caliber guy back that's also younger. He basically does the same thing as Clint Capella. He runs the floor, he rim protects. He's not an offensive juggernaut, so he's not going to be a guy that's going to be commanding the ball and needs the ball. And he's on a reasonable contract. It's 25 mil. You're paying Capella, I think, 23. So for 2 more mil a year, you could get that guy. Damn, what's his name? You gonna make me look his name up. Hold on, I gotta look at it. It's killing me now. I can't remember his name. Nick Claxton. Yeah, Nick Claxton is pretty much does the same thing as Clint Capella. He's not a guy that commands the ball. He's not a guy that you're gonna run your offense through. He's gonna play. He's gonna play defense, rim protect, rebound, and he's gonna run the floor. That's exactly what Clint Capella does. So you will get a younger version of Clint Capella, pretty much on the almost the same type of money as Clint Capella. I think he got 4 years, 100 mil, and you paying Clint Capella 23 mil this year on an expiring contract. So that could be an asset for Brooklyn having an expiring contract. And like I said, those 5 picks that you got back from the Knicks may not even be 5 picks. It may only be 3 because you may have to take 2 of them just to move Ben Simmons. So they going full-fledged rebuild over there in Brooklyn. So Brooklyn, they're losers because they still got Ben Simmons on the roster. They got to find a way to move Ben Simmons. They in the same situation as the Chicago Bulls with Zach LaVine. Now, you know, what you could do, and it's just a suggestion, this is probably what you could do if you Brooklyn, you probably would say, well, you know, since I'm getting off of contracts and not paying guys, let's do this deal. I'll take Zach LaVine off your hand if you attach draft picks with him, you know, and I could afford to take on his salary. You take Ben Simmons off my hand. Ben Simmons' contract comes off the books before Zach LaVine contract comes off the books. So even though you're taking back a contract, that contract will be coming off the books sooner than Zach LaVine's contract will be coming off the books. So if you Brooklyn, you can afford to take the deal. You can afford to pay it out. You know, best case scenario, you get the picks that come along with Zach LaVine because you're going to need that during a rebuild anyway. You pay Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine, let's just say Zach LaVine has a solid 2 years and plays well for those 2 years. If you the Brooklyn Nets, you then could flip that Zach LaVine into something else. You know, that's just, I mean, that's just a thought. Like I said, you know, Chicago probably ain't interested in taking back money, but the money they'll be taking back with Ben Simmons will come off the books much quicker than Zach LaVine's contract will. Hold on, let me see. When does Ben Simmons' contract ends exactly? I'll tell you right now. Hold on. Yeah, it looks like this season coming up is going to be the last season of Ben Simmons' contract at 40 mil. So his contract is going to be coming off the books at the end of this season, and it's going to be cheaper than Zach LaVine's. So I mean, if you Brooklyn, you're not worried about the money right now. You more so worried about the picks that you're gonna get back in return because that's what you need to rebuild. You just got a lot of picks from the Knicks, and if you could save those picks by just maybe thinking about doing this deal, what I'm talking about, yeah, because if you Brooklyn, you're not trying, you ain't winning nothing no time soon. So you know why not go ahead and take back a Zach LaVine? Zach LaVine will be a free agent at the end of the 2027 season, in which he has a player option for $48.9 million. You know, by the time the 2027 season, 2026, 27 season get here, just imagine how much the contracts will be then with the TV deals about to kick in a couple years. And just imagine how much so Zach LaVine had essentially basically 2 years and a player option for the third year in 2026, 2027. So if you can take Zach LaVine on from the Chicago Bulls and have them attach picks to Zach LaVine, and that's what you're gonna need if you Brooklyn, you can afford to fit the bill for Zach LaVine's salary, just as long as you get Ben Simmons out of here, because the main goal is to get picks. And then if you're lucky, you play Zach LaVine into being, you know, have a couple playing a good year, and then you can flip him somewhere else because the contract is only gonna get bigger. So you're looking at 48 million now, 49 million now. In 2-3 years from now, the contracts are gonna be 60 million, 65, 70 million. So that ain't gonna be as much to them as it is now. You know, that's just one suggestion of what if you Brooklyn, I mean, you can't even look at the fact that you're bringing back money. You just need to look at the fact that you're bringing back picks that you're gonna need to rebuild with, and you probably need to go like the OKC route. Just stockpile a bunch of picks, start drafting, making minor trades, taking on small contracts. If you can, take on bad contracts that come with picks attached to them, because that's what you're gonna need to rebuild with picks. Let's go. Moving on from Brooklyn, the Phoenix Suns. I got them as losers too, even though they just hired Mike Budenholzer over there. You're looking at the fact that they still don't have a point guard. You still got Bradley Beal. You still got KD and Devin Booker on your roster. Nurkic is still over there. But one of those two guys got to move. It's got to be Booker or it's got to be Beal. And Bradley Beal got a no trade clause in his contract, so it's gonna be hard to convince him to move. And to me, you got two of the same guys. Bradley Beal and Devin Booker are the same players to me. They both play the same position. You don't need to have either one of them out of position trying to play point guard. Now, in my opinion, what I would have done if I'm Phoenix is I would have called Atlanta about DeJounte Murray or either Trae Young. More than likely, it would have been Murray because Murray's contract is cheaper than Trae Young's. And two, you just getting a fresh Murray who just signed a deal. So you don't have to worry about re-signing Murray next year or the year after. I think Murray's got 4 years on his deal. So if I were Phoenix, I would have called about a DeJounte Murray and then tried to move one of those other two guards, Booker or Beal. And I understand you drafted Devin Booker, so you would have to convince Bradley Beal to waive his no trade clause. And I don't think he would have waived it to go to Atlanta. So that would have been the issue there. But that would have been nice to have a DeJounte Murray over there in Phoenix with Budenholzer, who's a defensive coach, and having DeJounte Murray being a two-way guard, playing defense on one end and then capable of giving you 20 on the other end, and you still having KD there, and either one of either Booker or Beal being there. But the issue with that would have been getting Bradley Beal to waive his no trade clause to go to Atlanta. So I think that would have been the move. I'm not sure if they even attempted to make a call to Atlanta about DeJounte Murray. But if it was me, that's what I would have done. So they really can't do much because they got a lot tied up in Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and KD. And like I said, they don't have a point guard. So, that's still going to be an issue over there. So, and, having a guy like Bradley Beal with no trade clause, that's an issue. So, you know what I mean? So they pretty much tied up with what they got. And Budenholzer, like I said, is a defensive coach. So those guys gonna have to buy into his defensive philosophy. And like I said, if I were Phoenix, that's what I would have done. I would have called Atlanta and see what it would have taken to get DeJounte Murray over there. That would have killed two birds with one trade. That would have got rid of one of the two guys that play the same position in either Bradley Beal or Devin Booker. And then I would have got a point guard in return that also plays defense that fits into what Mike Budenholzer like to do. And he can also give you 20 on the offensive end. That Phoenix, that's what I would have done. And it shouldn't have been an issue. The only issue probably would have been, like I said, is getting Bradley Beal to waive his no trade clause. But you would have been moving players from the east to the west. So that wouldn't have been, not like you trade from in the same conference, playoff team to playoff team. So that's why I got Phoenix as a loser. Until they get that, I don't see them really doing much of nothing until they get that situated and get a point guard in there and figure out what they're going to do with the Beal Booker situation. Because to me, like I said, them two are the same players. Moving on, another loser team I got this free agency is Milwaukee. They pretty much can't do nothing. I mean, like I stated yesterday, when you got Giannis' brother taking up a roster spot, there ain't really too much you can do. The only thing this year is you get a full year of Doc Rivers with his coaching staff. When Doc Rivers came in, he came in after the season had already started mid-season, and he had to pretty much inherit what was already there. He didn't have a off-season to make his changes and adjustments to his coaching staff, and I'm not sure what they will or can do with the roster because you got Giannis, you got Dame, you got Chris Middleton. That's a ton of money you got tied up right there. And I think they got Brook Lopez maybe on the trading block, but they seeking a first-round pick back in return. And like I said, when you got Giannis' brother on your team and he can't go nowhere because Giannis won't him there, it ain't but so much roster movement that you can do because he has to be on the roster because of Giannis. And so that's compromising you to be able to move and get the players you need because he's holding up a roster spot that could be used for a player to better the team. Bobby Portis is still there. So, it's really pretty much running back the same team that they had. It's just the fact that they're going to have a full year instead of having Doc Rivers come in during the season. He's going to now start the year off with the team and having a full offseason to have his pick his bench, his coaches and all the assistants and all that. So, Milwaukee, you didn't make a move. Looking at the fact that even though Indiana didn't make a move, but Indiana put you out the playoffs. So and if you essentially running back the same team, Indiana really doesn't have to make a move because they beat you essentially with the same team that you're going to run back. And Indiana's also going to get a couple players back that were injured last year. And you're looking at what everybody else was doing in the East, the contenders, that is. You look at what I already went over the Knicks. Look what they added, Mikal Bridges. So you didn't do nothing to counter that. Philly adding Paul George. You didn't do nothing to really counter that. You're looking at the fact that the Boston Celtics did win the chip. You didn't do nothing to counter that. And like I said, Indiana was beating you during the regular season. Even after Doc Rivers took over as the head coach, they were still beating the hell out you during the regular season. So you really even did nothing to get better than the Pacers. Like I said, Indy don't even really have to do much to beat Milwaukee. They seem to have Milwaukee's number. They put Milwaukee out in the playoffs, and they also had Milwaukee's number during the regular season, and that was prior to the Pascal Siakam trade. So either way you look at it, Milwaukee, they're on the losing end this offseason. Moving on, another loser I got as of now is the Denver Nuggets. They lost KCP. They didn't replace him. I thought Klay Thompson would have been a good replacement for KCP because even if he had went to Denver, he would have been probably a fourth option, and what he gave you in Golden State as a second option, that would have been good in Denver as a fourth option. It looked bad because the production wasn't second option production in Golden State, but what he gave you in Golden State, if he gives you that as a fourth option, if he had went to Denver, I think that would have been a good spot for him because he would have been the option behind Jokic. He would have been the option behind Murray and Michael Porter. And you will also just have him slide right in there at the same position that you lost in KCP. Just slide him right in there. And you also lost Reggie Jackson. So you was able to just slide him right in there. And you still, like I said, can't leave Klay. So anything that Klay gives, if he gives you 12, 13, 14 points, that'll be good from a fourth option standpoint, and that would be more than what KCP gave you last year. I think KCP averaged maybe like 11 last year. So Klay had came in and was able to give you 13 or 14 as a fourth option. That would have been damn good, considering he's a fourth option. You don't need him to be a second unless you have like major injuries and you have to bump him up in the rotation option-wise. But he would have been, in my opinion, a fourth option going over there. And that would have been a damn good fourth option going over there. But he didn't go over there. So I don't know who they're going to get to replace KCP. Like I said, Denver's also in win now mode. They got bounced out by Minnesota. So, looking at the situation over there in the West, I think they have to stay in the mix. So, I think that Klay Thompson would have been a great option over there. And there's rumors that they're going after Russell Westbrook. He's just going to basically replace Reggie Jackson coming off the bench. But I heard that like a few days ago and I ain't heard nothing else about it. So I'm not sure if they're going to land Russell Westbrook. I'm pretty sure that they will eventually because there's not a lot of teams out there that's going after Russell Westbrook. So I think Denver will be a good spot for him to go. And I think he ultimately will end up in Denver. But I'm just not sure what they're going to do about the two-guard position over there after losing KCP. And like I said, I think Klay Thompson would have been a good fit over there, but he's in Dallas. So that's not going to happen. Let's move on to the teams that stayed the same in this free agency. You look, and when I said stayed the same, I'm talking about they didn't win, they didn't lose. They pretty much going to be the same this year that they were last year. You're looking at Detroit. The reason I didn't put Detroit as a loser is because Detroit was never considered to be a winner anyway. So, they pretty much going to be the same. They fired their coach and they just hired JB Biggerstaff. So they drafted Ron Holland, I believe, with the 5th pick. And they pretty much going to be the same. I mean, it's nothing going to be different about Detroit. Don't look for Detroit to win many games. Don't look for Detroit to make no noise. Don't look for Detroit to do much of nothing. They signed Tobias Harris. I mean, that's not moving the needle. The draft Ron Holland. We still got Durant over there. Cade Cunningham signed his extension. Jaden Ivey over there. Isaiah Stewart over there. So, that's not really moving the needle. We'll see what JB Biggerstaff can do with their team in about 3 years. We'll see what they had in about 3 years from now. But as of now, they stayed the same. They damn sure didn't get better. And they couldn't have got no worse than what they was last year. They were so bad last year. The only way they can go is up. So I'm not saying they about to go way up right now, but I mean you can't have a repeat of the shit they did last year. Yeah, I mean it just ain't no way in the hell you can have a repeat of that. If that does happen in Detroit, I think the NBA needs to take over that team, like they did with the New Orleans Hornets, or now Pelicans. Um, they just need to take that franchise over, because there ain't no way in the hell you could duplicate last season, this season again, even though you got a new head coach. There ain't no way in the hell. So they damn sure ain't winners. They more so losers, but they pretty much gonna stay the same that they was last year. Not good. You look at the Charlotte Hornets. I mentioned Dalton Connect earlier. I think Dalton Connect should have went here, but instead they went and got a guy into John Saloon. They drafted him, which is not a bad player, but I think right now Dalton Connect would have been a better fit for that team. You're looking at Lonzo Ball is gonna be back. You could have just slid Dalton Connect right in at the 2. Then you got Brandon Miller at the 3, and then you brought back Miles Bridges. So if you knew you was going to re-sign Miles Bridges, why did you go and draft this guy like Tajon Saloon? I think this guy, Tajon Saloon, he's only going to get better the more playing time he gets. He's only going to get better. He's labeled as a project player. But if you look at some of his highlights, if you look at his body build, if you look at his height, weight, if this guy gets playing time, this guy is going to be a solid player. And the only place he can play is the 3 or the 4. And if you re-sign Miles Bridges, he's not going to get playing time over Miles Bridges. And he's damn sure not going to get no playing time over Brandon Miller, who, in my opinion, played like he could have won Rookie of the Year. But the fact that he was in the same rookie class as Victor Wembanyama, that took all the light away from Brandon Miller, combined with the fact that he plays in Charlotte, and a lot of people don't pay attention to Charlotte Hornet basketball. That's how good I think Brandon Miller played this past season as a rookie. So you damn sure not moving him out of the way to make room for Tajon Saloon, and you're not moving Miles Bridges out of the way, who just recently re-signed. So, in my opinion, if you knew you was going to re-sign Miles Bridges, you should have just went Dalton Connect and slid him in right there at the 2. And you could have plugged somebody in at I think Mark Davis is still there for Duke at the 5. But that's just me. That's what I would have done. But I'm not sure if they actually knew 100% whether they were going to re-sign Miles Bridges. But I think they had to have in the back of their mind, it was a good chance they were going to re-sign him. So I'm not sure why they went and drafted a guy that plays that position when you just took Brandon Miller last year, and you damn sure ain't moving Brandon Miller for this guy. I think Brandon Miller fits perfectly in Charlotte at the small forward position. So now you get a full season of both Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, playing together for a full season. And Dalton Connect, with his ability to catch and shoot, I think he would have slid perfectly in there at the 2 between LaMelo and Brandon Miller. So if you Charlotte, you stayed the same. You pretty much going to have another season this year like you had last year, even though you just acquired Charles Lee. You got a new head coach. He come from Boston. So I honestly thought that that's what they were going to go in the draft with Dalton Connect. But they didn't. So I guess they like Tajon Saloon's upside. But I just don't see how he's going to get the minutes to show you his upside when you just re-sign Miles Bridges and you drafted Brandon Miller last year. So hopefully they work that out over there. But as of now, I got the Charlotte Hornets pretty much being the same team this season that they were last season. Now they had a guy, like I said, drafted Dalton Connect, who fell all the way to the Lakers at 17. I think it would have been a different discussion. I think the Lakers would have been slightly better, and could have possibly been, if healthy, could have possibly been pushing for a play-in spot and possibly making that last playoff spot, But moving on, the San Antonio Spurs, I think they stayed the same, even though they just got in a 3-team deal. They just acquired Harrison Barnes, and they got Chris Paul over there on a 1-year deal. And they drafted Stephon Castle. I think what the Spurs are doing now is the Spurs are not really trying to – they still rebuilding, and they're not trying to speed up the rebuild process. So, Chris Paul, 1-year deal. I think he's going to bring some leadership over there, especially when he's a point guard. You don't really have to have another elite scorer over there when you got Victor. You just need somebody that can be a floor general like Chris Paul if he can stay healthy. And hopefully he can, because he probably ain't going to be asked to do much over there other than be a coach on the floor to help pop out with Victor in his development. And we see what Victor Wembanyama is going to be. So adding a guy like Chris Paul over there, who's a veteran, who's not going to command a lot of the ball, who really wants to assist and set up more guys than score the ball himself, who basically is a coach on the floor, and he's playing for Popovich. So that's going to be a help to Victor Wembanyama. He's going to have a coach on the sideline, and he's going to have a coach out there on the floor. And even when Chris Paul ain't on the floor with him, he's going to be on the sideline being an additional coach along with Pop for Victor Wembanyama and those other young guys over there, like Stephon Castle. And Stephon Castle, by the way, looking good in Summer League. And I understand it is only Summer League, but damn, he looked good out there. No, not like that, but as a player, he looked good out there in Summer League right now. So I think they stayed the same. I think they just going to slow roll this process, and they going to stay flexible with the draft picks. They going to stay flexible with the cap. And then, like I said, they brought in Harrison Barnes, who's also a veteran guy, out there on the floor with those other guys too. He's not really a locker room cancer, so to speak. So they got two veterans over there. I think they're just going to slow roll this rebuild until they find the right time to speed it up. So they're going to stay flexible with the cap. They're going to stay flexible with the assets and the draft picks that they have. So when the opportunity comes about for them to make a splash, it's going to be the right splash, and it's going to come at the right time, and it's not going to feel like they sped up the rebuild, so to speak. So I got San Antonio pretty much being the same team this upcoming season that they was this past season. They might win a few extra games because they actually have a floor general out there that can be the coach and put guys in certain positions on the floor as a coach. So I got them pretty much being the same. They may win a couple more games and be even more competitive, losing games, but they're going to lose them. They're going to be real close games. So they pretty much going to be the same this year as they was last year. The Boston Celtics, they pretty much going to be the same team. They just re-signed their own guys. They didn't have any wiggle room to go out and make any new moves in free agency. Like I said, they locked in Tatum, signing him to that $300-something million deal that he was eligible for. Jaylen Brown's locked in. Al Horford will be back. Kristaps Porzingis, he'll be back whenever he get cleared to play off his injuries or whatever. Derek White. So they pretty much just brought their own guys back. It wasn't nothing too much that they could do. Like I said, they're coming off a championship NBA Finals win, so it really wasn't too much they're going to do. They're going to be pretty much the same team this season that they were last season when they just won the chip. Utah, pretty much the same team. Laura Marketing in trade talks. Walker Kessler is also up on the trade block. John Collins is there. They took Cody Williams. They took Kyle Filipowski, the big man out of Duke. That's why I think they're going to be moving off of Laura Marketing. They just waiting on the right deal or Walker Kessler. Either one of those two guys is definitely going to be moved because I think Kyle Filipowski, he was a second-round pick, but he should have went in the first round. I'm not saying he was a lottery pick, but he definitely was a first-round pick, and he fell to them in the second round. So they got him as a steal. And they also got somebody else in the draft. I can't remember exactly who it was outside of Kyle Filipowski and Cody Williams. But pretty much, and then they got Colin Sexton on the trading block. So pretty much they're going to be the same team. They just really, Danny Ainge is really slow rolling it and building a team and moving off of guys that have value while they have value and trying to maximize the assets he can get in return for the guys that have value while they have value. So I feel like they got somebody. I'm missing somebody else that they acquired in the draft. It's killing me that I can't remember. Let me look this up. Oh boy. Oh man, it's killing me. Let me see who they got in there. Isaiah Collier. That's it. Point guard out of USC. That's who they got. So they made some nice additions through the draft. And Isaiah Collier, Cody Williams, and Kyle Filipowski. So, like I said, one of those two guys will be moved, Walker Kessler or Lloyd Marketing, because Kyle Filipowski, like I said, is a first-round talent that got drafted in the second round. So they got to steal with him, and he plays the center position, and he's a guy you can actually go through, and they did at Duke. Actually, he was a big part of that Duke offense, Kyle Filipowski was, and Isaiah Collier was the best player out there in USC. So that's why Colin Sexton is on the blocks. That's why both Laura Marketing and Walker Kessler, one of those two will be gone. And I think it's just a matter of time before, and they got Keontae George out there. And it's also a matter of time before John Collins is gone too. So they just slow rolling it. They just making smart moves, getting off guys that they know they no longer want, they no longer gonna pay, and they still have value. So they trying to maximize. If you Danny Ainge, that's what you're doing right now. You're maximizing guys that you know that's not gonna be part of your future. You're replacing them guys that will be part of your future, and you're getting rid of them while they still have some value. So that's why I got Utah being the same. They not, even though they're in the West, they're not trying to win. They're not losers. They're not winners. They pretty much gonna have the same season this year that they had this past season. You look at Portland Trailblazers, they pretty much stayed the same. I think they now have to move off of DeAndre Ayton because they drafted Donovan Clingan, and they also had Robert Williams already on the roster. So, and I don't know what you're gonna do with Grant, with Jeremy Grant. So, they pretty much gonna be the same team. You got Scoot Henderson there, you got Shane Sharp there, and you also got Anthony Simmons there. So, I'm not. They gonna be the same team. They pretty much gonna be the same team until they figure out an identity and direction they trying to go. Whatever it is that Chauncey Billups and his guys are trying to do. Once they figure that out and get right into that, then because it seemed to me like they just picking the best players available. I think that if they were taking Donovan Clingan, I'm not sure why they haven't announced that Ayton will be on the trade block because I don't think you draft Donovan Clingan at 7. Just to not play him. And I don't think you're going to just sit DeAndre Ayton paying him 30-something million a year. So I'm not sure why they haven't already said DeAndre Ayton's on the trade block, which I'm predicting that he will be. And Robert Williams probably too. But if I'm them, I'm keeping Robert Williams. Even though he has injury situation or whatever, I think that if you move Ayton, you got to keep Williams because Williams can come in off the bench and still give you that rim protection when Donovan Clingan sits. And he's not a guy that you're going to run the offense through. He's not a big that needs the ball. He's just a defensive big that can rebound, alter shots, and he can run the floor. Now, you can get him, you can spoon feed him, but he's not a guy that you're going to actually run a play or get a ball down to, and he needs at least 13 shots a game. That's not Robert Williams. That's why I would keep him over a guy like Ayton, who you would have to run the offense through. And I don't think that you're going to sit Ayton because you drafted Clingan, and Clingan is a guy that you drafted at 7 that has to play, and you're not going to sit Ayton making 30-something million. So I'm not sure why they ain't already put Ayton on the trading block, which I think eventually a team is going to call and ask about, and then they're going to move him. So Portland, the same. I got them being the same. They're not winning nothing. They're not losing nothing. They pretty much going to have the same season this year that they had this past. Moving over to Cleveland, I think Cleveland's going to be the same. They just re-signed Donovan Mitchell. Now I'm not sure if Darius Garland is going to stay because it was rumored that if Donovan Mitchell resigns, that he was going to request a trade. The trade request, I haven't heard about it yet. Donovan Mitchell has signed this deal. Isaac Okoro is a free agent. There was rumors of them moving Jared Allen because they need Evan Mobley. They want to slide him to the 5 and get him more involved in the offense. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. I think they still can be a playoff team. There's still some free agents that they could use in Cleveland. But I think they pretty much going to be the same team, unless some blockbuster deal come in which they move Darius Garland, but that ain't came yet. So I'm not sure if Darius Garland going to still request out now that they've re-signed Donovan Mitchell to extension. Like I said, Isaac Okoro is a free agent. Not sure what they're gonna do with Jared Allen because they want to slide Mobley over to the 5 and give him more involved in the offense. But as of now, Cleveland Cavs, you stayed the same. Let's move on. The Miami Heat, they've stayed the same. They haven't added anybody. It was rumors of them going after DeMar DeRozan, but obviously that didn't happen because DeMar landed in Sacramento. They really didn't add much of nothing to Miami other than the draft picks. But Miami is one of them teams that they don't really make a lot of blockbuster moves, or they haven't made any blockbuster moves lately. And they seem to be a team that makes the playoffs. And once they get in the playoffs, they do just enough to get through the play-ins to make the playoffs, and then they make their run in the playoffs and get on their hot streak then. So Miami as of now stayed the same. You're looking at a team like the Philadelphia 76ers. You can say they got better. But to me, this is a tricky one. It's going to be either Philly stayed the same or they got better because they acquired Paul George. But if you look at um, recent history of the Sixers, they've been trying to get over this second round hump and they ain't been able to do it. And they thought that and they've had Embiid the whole time, and they didn't get over the hump with having Tyrese Maxey there, and that's a guy who they drafted, just like they drafted Embiid. But Embiid has been there the whole time and hasn't been able to get over the hump. But it seems like it don't matter what player they add, they just can't seem to get over the hump because they've had Brent Brown, they've had Doc Rivers, and now you got Nick Nurse, and you still had Embiid there the entire time. And I understand that Maxey hadn't been there through the entire process, that he just recently got there past few years. But he's now coming into his own. And you added Paul George. So I'm not sure if Philly's still going to be able to get over this hump because you were supposed to try to get over this hump when you acquired James Harden. That didn't work. You were supposed to be trying to get over this hump when you chose Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. That didn't work. So it seems like Philly is like whatever they try to do, they can't seem to get out of this second round. They've getting beat, and it's not like they get beat by the same team in the second round. They've gotten beat by Toronto in the second round. They've gotten beaten by Boston. They've gotten beaten by Miami. They've got beaten by Atlanta. All different teams have beaten them in the second round. So I'm not sure if they stayed the same or got better. I'm leaning towards they stayed the same because Paul George has an injury history just like Embiid does. And the worst case scenario for the Sixers is both of these guys get injured down the stretch of the season going into the playoffs, and they're not going to be at full strength going into the playoffs. So that's worst case scenario. It don't seem like they have an issue in the regular season because, they win regular season games to make the playoffs. But this move that they made, acquiring Paul George, ain't about the regular season. It's about getting over the hump, competing, getting to the NBA Finals. And they don't have a problem winning regular season games. That's not the issue. And that's not the end goal here is to win regular season games. The end goal is to get out of this second round, compete, and get to the finals. But that for whatever reason, it just like whatever Philly do, it don't seem to work. So I'm leaning towards they stayed the same. You got rid of James Harden and you acquired Paul George. So basically you just switched. You just sent James Paul to the Clippers, and then you just basically got Paul George to walk over to Philly from LA. So, I mean, that's almost damn near like they stayed the same, and I understand they filled in other pieces and they were just waiting to get the big piece, and then everybody else filled in with the Kelly Oubres and, acquiring these other guys to fill out the roster, Eric Gordon, and but I'm leaning towards them staying the same until they prove and show me otherwise. I got the Sixers as being the same team. Make the playoffs this year. I don't think they're going to go in as a low seed. I think they're going to go in as a higher seed this season than they went in this past season. But I'm pretty much leaning towards them being the same. You got the Toronto Raptors. I think they'll be the same, even though they inked Scotty Barnes to his extension. They signed Manuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, and they got in a deal for OG Anunoby. They lost Gary Trent. He's a free agent. But they also got the guy, what is it? Grady Dick. What the hell is his name? Came out of Kansas. Let me make sure I'm saying his name right. I don't want to put the last name first and the first name last. Yeah, Grady Dick. So they just got him basically out of Kansas to fill in and slide in where they lost Gary Trent at. And he's a sharpshooter. So, and then you still have RJ Barrett there. You just inked in Emmanuel Quickly, and you also inked in Barnes. And you have a big there, Poto. I can't pronounce his last name, but he's there. So I think they're going to have a similar season this year, upcoming season that they had this past season. Let's move on to Houston. I think they stayed the same. There was rumors that they were trying to go after KD or Jimmy Butler. That didn't happen. They drafted Reed Shepherd out of Kentucky. They also had Fred VanVleet there. I'm not sure what the deal is with Cam Whitmore, but he needs more playing time. He can be a starter somewhere. You're looking at what they've done. I'm not sure where he's going to fit in at because you got Fred VanVleet at the 1. You got Jalen Green at the 2. You got Dylan Brooks at the 3. Jabari Smith at the 4. And then you got Sengun at the 5. And then you just drafted Reed Shepherd. And then you acquire AJ Griffin from the Hawks. Then you got Cam Whitmore. Then you got one of the Thompson twins over there. So I'm not sure exactly what they got planned for Cam Whitmore. That could be a big trade piece for them um, to be included in any type of blockbuster deal that they're trying to pull off and do. Because I think Cam Whitmore has starter capabilities and should be starting. Now, if you somebody like Atlanta who needs a player that can play alongside Trey, I think Cam Whitmore can. And I think the shooting guard position is the position that he can play. I'm not sure. I wouldn't put him out of position at the 1 or the 3. Strictly as a 2. He has the body and the physicality to go in the paint, create his own shot, hit the perimeter shot. So he's a young player that he's just not getting the minutes over there in Houston. And I think he should be a starter somewhere. And I think that's a good trade piece to use if you Houston to pull off a blockbuster trade, because I think he is starter material at the 2. He's just not getting the minutes over there in Houston to make his stats better and bigger than what they are. I think he's got the capability to do that. But looking at the lineup that I just read, I don't know where you're gonna slide him at to make that happen. So I got Houston being the same. I think Houston has potential to get better on the back end of the season, in which I think they will. They probably could, because they actually got better on the back end of this past season. I think they won like 11 or 12 straight games, something like that, and they almost got into the play-in. So I think that they probably going to be similar to that, making more of a push towards the play-in, having another year together and adding Reed Shepherd. So I think I'm leaning towards them being slightly better, but more of the same type of team, but slightly better because they are in the West. The West is deep. The West is tough. So I'm gonna put Houston right there, staying the same, but being slightly better, possibly making that push on the back end of the season towards making a play-in spot out there in the West. The Washington Wizards stayed the same. They didn't get better. They didn't get worse. The only thing they did was added Alex Sarr, the 2nd overall pick. And they added, I think, Valanciunas. They signed him too. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. Valanciunas maybe 5 and Alex Sarr as a stretch 4 or whatever. I think that's probably what they're going to do. You still got Jordan Poole there. You still got Kyle Kuzma there. So, I think they pretty much going to be the same team this season that they were last season. I think that they're in the same situation. They rebuilding. They just, stockpiling assets and cheaper contracts. I think it's just a matter of time before Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma both moved for younger guys and draft picks. I think that's what they're going to do. That's how Travis Slink, the GM over there in Washington, that's pretty much is how he moves when he rebuilds teams. So I think I'm looking for one of them 2 guys, maybe both of those guys, to be on the trade block during this season, Kuzma and Poole, because Poole was a shell of himself. He didn't play nothing like he did in Golden State, and I understand there's 2 different systems, 2 different coaches, 2 different styles of play, but he didn't look nothing like Golden State Jordan Poole over there in DC. He ain't look nothing like that over there in Chocolate City. So a lot of it got to do with the hair getting knocked out of him by Draymond. So, I didn't know that much hair got knocked out of him. We all seen the footage, but he damn sure didn't look nothing like Golden State Jordan Poole over there in DC. So I got them staying the same. They didn't get better at all. And you can't get too much worse than what they was in DC. So they stayed the same. You're looking at the Chicago Bulls. They also stayed the same. They still got Zach LaVine. Still got to find a way to move off of him. So they may have to attach picks to move him. Like I said, they got Josh Giddey over there. Kobe White still over there. Vucevic still over there. Patrick Williams, they re-signed him, and they drafted the hometown kid, Bazelis. I always pronounce his name right. Matas Bazelis. Matas Bazelis, hometown kid. So they drafted him over there. So pretty much they in a rebuild. They just got to find a way to get in. That DeMar DeRozan's gone. They now got to find a way to get off of Zach LaVine. But other than that, they in a rebuild mode. They, probably gonna have to take a step back to take a step forward, looking at this whole Zach LaVine situation that they got on their hand over there. So I got them pretty much being the same this season that they were. Got to be the same this upcoming season that they were this past season. Last but not least, the Indiana Pacers. I got them being the same team. They're gonna get some guys back that they missed during the season due to injuries. Obi Toppin's back. I think that they could also add a big um, because Miles Turner. My issue there is he doesn't get enough rebounds to be a big, in my opinion. Being 6'11", I don't think he rebounds enough, and that's got a lot to do with him playing out on the perimeter. So I think if they could make a move for a big man, and I've said this before, if they can go and get a big and run the two big system similar to what Minnesota's doing with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, and basically Miles Turner would serve as the Karl Anthony Towns. And if they can go and get somebody like a Clint Capella who can just rim, protect, and rebound, who's not going to shoot the ball, who pretty much can get spoon-fed by Tyrese Halliburton. And like I said, Clint Capella's on an expiring deal. So you're not tied up long-term with a Clint Capella. He's going to rim, protect. He's going to rebound. He's going to get you 10-plus boards a game. That's something that Miles Turner ain't doing because he's too far out on the perimeter playing as a stretch four to the point where he's not getting as many boards as he should because he's not in the paint. But if you go and get a Clint Capella who's going to be in the paint, who's going to rim protect, who's going to grab boards, and who's also going to run the floor, and you could be a good pick and roll guy for Tyrese Halliburton, who I think he led the league in assists, if I'm not mistaken. So, and like I said, you're not going to be tied up long term with Clint Capella because he's on an expiring contract this year. So if it don't work, then you're not tied up with him long term, and that will help the rebounding, that will help the rim protection, and that would also be a plus to the defense in Indiana. And like I said, they didn't really have to add much. They're going to get guys back that they lost the injury during the season, and I think that they could benefit from adding a big. Just a defensive big, somebody's not going to command the ball like a Clint Capella. Now, if Atlanta want to trade him, I'm not sure what they will be looking to get back in return. I don't have the roster pulled up in front of me right now, but you may have to get a third team involved just so Atlanta won't come out on the losing end again. So probably picks or get the deal done, knowing Atlanta, and that's all they want to do: shred salary and get picks back in return. And they would have, if that happens, they would have gotten the 3 picks back that they used to get DeJounte Murray because they already got 2 from the Pelicans. So if they can wing one more pick back and get rid of a guy that is, if they don't extend him, he won't be part of the future anyway because they need to make room for Okongwu to get more playing time, in which he's already gotten a contract extension. So it only makes sense if that's the route that you want to do. But, I mean, a deal ain't a deal unless both sides agree to it. But yeah, man, that's my winners, losers, and teams that stayed the same during this offseason so far. There's a couple moves that haven't been made, a couple free agents that haven't been signed, and we don't know when they're going to sign or where they're going to sign or who's going to make what moves with who. But that's it, man. My winners and losers and teams that stayed the same this past or currently during this NBA offseason. Like, share, comment on the video, hit the notification button. So you can get all the notification when I update and drop new content. Follow me on my platforms, Twitter, X, or whatever you call it, at Damn YouTube Sports Talk. You can follow the Sports Talk page at IG or at Damn_YouTube_Sports Talk. And if you want to follow my personal page on IG, is Ralph_Sneaks with a Z. Until the next episode, I'm signing off, man. I'll holler at y'all. Peace.